for an
you,
opening
Mr. Chairman.
statement.
Thanks for this hearing. Thanks for the kind words. You'll have to put up with me for another 12 months or so, but those were very kind words. You know, during the entirety of my long congressional career, 35 years, Intercity Rail has had funding starts and stops, you know, threats to be disbanded, endured the whims of our annual appropriation process. No way to run a railroad, shall we say, in terms of being able to strategically plan for the investments you need to improve service, to provide additional service, to acquire new power and new train sets. There's someone's isn't muted out there, Mr. Chairman.
Yes. Can you please mute your lines? Thank you.
Train got up, 96 hours gone up, don't campaign. Don't campaign.
Members, please mute.
Mr. Cohen.
Okay.
Wow. Okay. Don't know what was going on there. In any case, you know, the enactment of the Passenger Rail Improvement Act in 08 began to provide a little more certainty, but the states anticipated a federal partner with about $90 million a year. But then that number shot up to $8 billion with the passage of the American Recovery Reinvestment Act, an additional $2.5 billion the following year. But then it dropped off again, and then it climbed up again during the FAST Act when Congress authorized hundreds of millions more. But that has caused, you know, Amtrak to limp along with, again, not being capable to look at reasonably expanding service and then look at, you know, plans to rebuild the network and to repower although they are in the process of acquiring new power and train sets. So the Infrastructure Investment Jobs Act is revolutionary in my very long tenure in Congress, 35 years, in that there's guaranteed and robust funding for the next 5 years. $66 billion in appropriated reliable funds and another $35 billion in authorizations, which, you know, will not necessarily be easy, but the authorization is there. The appropriated funds in this bill are 6 times the amount we did under the FAST Act, and the FAST Act was pretty good for rail comparing to what we've been doing. And you know, this will be way bigger, and it provides competitive grant funding for states to lead the development, new and expanded corridors, incentivize interstate compacts, creates inventories of projects in the Northeast corridor for major infrastructure investments, bridges, stations, tunnels. Don mentioned a 111-year-old tunnel. Well, the tunnel under Baltimore is 149 years old. And if you go through in the viewing car, you can see that it's raining inside because of the leaking water mains, and it's brick. How long is that mortar gonna hold? We had great engineers in the late 1800s, apparently, but these things don't last forever. And if that tunnel goes down, it'll be disastrous for freight and passenger movement in the northeastern United States. And the costs over the time to build an alternate under the river or there far exceed the cost of making the investment and getting ahead of the problem. You know, these are investments that we should be making. And you know, I also supported the idea of Amtrak doing additional investments in intercity passenger rail, particularly looking at city pairs where they could, you know, it used to be everybody took the shuttle to New York from here. Now a vast number of people prefer to take the train. And that's just one city pair route. There are many others around the country, somewhat longer than that, where you could divert people from the highways, where you could divert people from the inconvenience of commuter air. By the time you go to the airport, go through security, get on the plane, get delayed, you know, get off the plane, get, you know, wherever you're going from the airport. So I think there's tremendous potential there, both to deal with greenhouse gas reduction, congestion, and quality of life for the American people. We had a great testimony earlier this year from the Virginia Secretary of State. I don't know if it'll change now the Republicans have taken over. Maybe they'll go back to doing things the old way, which doesn't work. There were plans to build 2 more lanes on 95, take about 10 years, cost $12 billion, and the projections were, when they finished it, it would be as congested as it is today. It's called induced demand. Build it and they will come. They came to a novel agreement with CSX to provide a new rail route, essentially or partially a new rail route with a new rail bridge over the river here in DC for a lesser cost, and it's going to be able to, ameliorate the commute time of many people and move them much more fuel efficiently. Hopefully that'll stick. I tried to, in the INVEST Act, say that before building major highway projects, states and cities had to look at whether or not rail transit alternatives could solve the problems better. Unfortunately, that was stripped out by the Senate. They considered, considering anything other than building more highways to be problematic. But it doesn't work. I had a number as we were doing the bill. I can't remember how many tens of thousands of miles were built in our inner cities in the last 30 years, and they're more congested than ever. We've got to look at these sorts of viable alternatives. But the other key thing we're going to need, like happened in the case with Virginia, is cooperation with the freights. We have the greatest freight network in the world, and we don't want to jeopardize that. It's the second most efficient way to move cargo after water. So we want to encourage it. But the point is, the law is pretty clear. Preference over freight transportation, except in an emergency, intercity and commuter rail passenger transportation provided for Amtrak has preference over freight transportation in using a rail line junction crossing unless the board orders otherwise under this subsection. Well, obviously that has not been observed, and that is of concern. As the trains get longer and longer, I got Chrissy funds to help build a siding so we could move trains more efficiently between Eugene and Portland, Oregon. It takes about over 3 hours. It's 110 miles. Now the length of the trains UP is going to run are going to be too long for the siding, which is, there's got to be some compromise here that can both better utilize the rights of way or utilize reserved rights of way that the railroads aren't using now, somehow something that's mutually beneficial, as it was for CSX in Virginia, because they got access to new rail bridge and the other rail bridge is at 99%. I think there are places around the country where that could happen, and I'm hoping that this amount of funding and a new attitude on the part of freight to sit down and actually talk will move us in that direction. So I look forward to hearing about the plans for the witnesses in the hearing today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.